Over the years, I reckon many a folk have asked me about my pocket watch. It's a story I'm happy to share with you today. It's a story about how I procured this beautiful Jenson solid gold timepiece. A couple hundred years old, I'd say. This piece is handed down from generation to generation, and the story starts right across this river here. Painted Sky Ranch, at the time occupied by Mr. Wrobel. Wrobel was a Polish gentleman, didn't speak much English, but I get ahead of myself. I guess actually the story starts here, right at this rock. You see, the story starts with Mr. Leopold Strauss. We'd just arrived at Horseshoe Overlook, and Leopold Strauss had already made his way into Valentine and handed out loans to any person that would take one. Rather, these debtors would ever be able to pay back the loan. It didn't seem to bother him much. He had some muscle to take care of it. So he asked me to take care of some loan repayments and visit a few people, one of which was Mr. Wrobel. And that was the first visit on my list. I headed out and made my way to see him. You see, being the considerate man that Herr Strauss was, he didn't think to mention to me that this man didn't speak English. I didn't find that out until I entered the door, and, well, I didn't understand a damn word the man said. I reckon that didn't bother me too much, though. You see, I've always had a way of getting my feelings across.
Now, you remember where you're keeping that silver?
It didn't take too long, much like most folk. Mr. Wrobel told me take anything that I wanted from the house to repay his loan. I searched the cabinets. I found a silver earring. I found some fine brandy. There wasn't much, but I happened to notice that Mr. Wrobel wouldn't move from in front of this little cabinet, so, like most people, I figured that's where the good stuff was. Sure enough, a gold wedding ring. Enough of a score to pay off his loan in full. I had successfully recovered the debt, but I kept looking just for myself. He had a money fold and a little coin purse, about $15 worth of stuff, and as I was leaving, there was one last nightstand next to the door. I opened it up, and I happened to notice this beautiful Jenson gold silver timepiece. And, well, I knew I was on a mission for Mr. Leopold Strauss, so if I put that in my pocket now, it would just get turned into the camp. So I headed outside, grabbed my horse, rode right down the road, and turned right back around. Now, at this time in the story, I'd like to mention that if you plan on visiting Mr. Wrobel and trying to take the same antique pocket watch that I got, well, you need to pull that drawer out first. Otherwise, when you revisit the site, you'll never be able to get it ever again. But once you open that drawer during the mission, it will spawn the watch, and that'll stay there. Once I headed down the road, I went right back to the property. It didn't take long at all. I turned right around and went back to get the watch. You see, it was a little different this time. Mr. Wrobel wasn't all beat up, and, well, the rancher who owned the property was actually there visiting, unbeknownst to me. And unfortunately, this is where the story takes a dreadful turn. You see, they weren't too happy about me being on their property. It seemed like Mr. Wrobel held a grudge, and, well, the rancher, that was his property. So when I went back in and finally took the antique pocket watch, I was met with some aggression, and unfortunately, I had to shoot the rancher in the head. Finally, I got the pocket watch, and I was hoping to get out of there soon enough where Mr. Wrobel and I wouldn't have another altercation. But I think my scarf around my face, I don't think I needed to do that. It just made him think I was just another robber, and unfortunately, he came in the house too. I'll be damned if I didn't have to blow his head off. I left that day thinking I had killed Mr. Wrobel. It was a sad feeling. I had robbed the man of everything he had, and I shot him in the face and left him to die there. I also stole everything on his persons as I left. Unfortunately, I lived with that guilt for a few years. However, I'm happy to say I had a few friends visit him several years later, and somehow he survived the wounds. I don't know how, but he lived through just fine. So all that worry and stress was for nothing, as he just respawned and seemed like nothing was ever shot in his face or his neck. It's odd how life works sometimes. Now, after I had finished collecting the other 2 debts from Chick Matthews and Lily Millet, I headed back to camp and put the funds that I had recovered back in the box, so camp gained some money, and, well, wouldn't you know it, my share was about $15. Not a bad day's work. As the sun was setting, I was getting tired anyway, and I went over to my items, and I didn't find the watch, but I discovered I needed to go into my satchel and equip the watch by going to Kit's pocket in my satchel. Once I opened up watches, I equipped the antique watch, and, well, that's about the end of the story. I've had the watch ever since. Now, I've always told people that it's a family heirloom that's been passed down from generation to generation. And although that's true, Mr. Wrobel's family was the generation that kept passing it down. Now, if you want this watch yourself, just follow my guide here and you can own this beautiful timepiece all your own.